In loving memory of square checkbox. This is a checkbox. Yeah, it is. It's square. It has a check mark inside, and its distinguishing feature is that you can select any number of them at the same time. Fair. Me, myself, and I. Different operating systems render them differently during their evolution. Oh, the macOS checkboxes and how they've changed over time. God, I hated the leopard ones, how they were like the flat cut on the top and not great. These ones look great, though. That's cool, because I was meant to be more brutalist. Oof. We're going deep. 1994. Blah. This is before I was born, so I've never actually used an operating system with these checkboxes. Curious if any of y'all have, but that's foreign to me. Then we have the Windows ones. Oh god, the Windows 11 ones are weird. You even see here the aliasing around it is a little strange, where it just grays on the edges in a strange way. Like it almost looks like the blue was overlaid on top. The Windows 8 ones were fine. Not great. Not like, certainly no Sonoma or Mavericks, but they're tolerable. Windows 7 ones were awful. Anybody defending these should be questioned. Windows XP ones were fine. It looked not great because it was like so low res, but you could get the idea. I'm realizing the humor of what they're putting in some of these, like blood test done, drug test. Is this like the only example you could find of the Windows 2000? Oh boy, Windows 95. These are different. Why did he separate these? These are the same. And then Windows for Work Groups 311. Was the X just the standard for a while? Because that's weird. As you can see, even the check mark wasn't always there. One thing remained constant. Checkboxes were square. Why square? Because that's how you can tell them from radio buttons, where you can only have one selected. Their distinguishing feature is a single choice. If you select one, everything else is deselected. I'm not sure when the distinction between square and round was introduced, but it seemed to already exist in the 90s. Interesting. In this 90s Turbo Pascal setup, you had the parentheses for selecting one or the other, and then you had the check boxes in the brackets as the square. Never thought of like who came up with that. The history of this is very interesting. Here's Norton Commander from 93, following the same pattern. Very, very interesting. Guess where X is used now? In Markdown. What a comeback. Yeah, it's funny. This is what I associate with like a checkbox being checked, because I write so much Markdown that this is just how you mark things as complete. And since then, every major operating system has followed this tradition, from Windows 3.11 back in 93 through 95 to Windows 11 today, from macOS 4 till now with Sonoma. There was a brief confusion up until 1986 when Apple used rounded rectangles instead of circles. Considering the design language we have just learned, I could see why this would be confusing. But it was quickly resolved. The point is, every major OS vendor has been adhering to the convention that checkboxes are square and radio buttons are round. Then the web came in. And when I say web, I mean CSS. And when I say CSS, I mean Flash and then JavaScript. That's a sentence. You see, people on the web think conventions are boring. I don't know if he means this positively or negatively, but it is correct. Conventions are boring. That regular controls need to be reinvented and redesigned. They don't need to be, but it is kind of fun. They don't believe there are norms. There are norms. I believe there are norms. I just think it's fun to challenge them sometimes. And that's why it's common to see radio buttons containing check marks. Twitter. Yeah, radio buttons having check marks is cursed. Or square radio buttons. Yeah, that's much more cursed. Following the web's example, native apps introduced us to round checkboxes. Oof. Sometimes people don't make distinctions anymore. For example, here in the first group is single choice, where the second one is multiple choice. That's actually awful. Having no UI indication difference between something you can only select one of and something you can select multiple of. Like there should be some indication here. That hurts. Or here, one of the polls is single answer. Another is multiple answer. Who, me, myself, I, yep, that's one. There can be only one. God, that's awful. You don't know in Telegram web if you're allowed to select more than one option or not. Yeah, I don't know which of these behaves which way as soon as I look at it. I definitely agree that having different types of checkboxes for different behaviors makes sense. And it seems like Telegram's a recurring offender here. Ugh. Anyways. How are you supposed to know that you can click multiple options, or that if you're going to click an option, it will change something else you've selected before? Weird. And I love, this is a great meme. Despite all the chaos and temptation, operating system vendors knew better. To this day, they follow the convention. Checkboxes are square, radio buttons are round. Maybe it was part of their internal training. Maybe they had experienced art directors. Maybe it was just luck. I don't know. Doesn't really matter. But somehow, They managed to stick to convention. Until this day, I did not expect this to be a Vision OS thing. Why does my headset haunt me? Apple's the first major operating system vendor who has abandoned a 4-decade-long tradition. Their new Vision OS, for the first time in the history of Apple, will have rounded checkboxes. That is kind of funny. There's a thing called a checkbox, but it's not a box, it's actually round. The only box here is the thing containing them all. Very interesting. Also, am I blind or is there no difference between the left and the right here? This one's slightly bluer than that, but there's no difference between these, right? Yeah. Anyways, how should we even call these? Radio checks? Check buttons? Anyway, with Apple's betrayal, I think it's fair to say there's no hope for this tradition to continue. I therefore officially announce 2024 to be the year when the square checkbox has finally died. It's a 40-year run. Kids these days will use the toggle anyway. Fair point. This author lists a bunch of credits. They are awesome. As soon as I scrolled through their blog arrows, I had to do a bunch of videos about their stuff because they're really, really cool. So shout out to Tonsky for this. Honestly, I'm going to support you on Patreon because of how good your blog posts are. I also just found an incredible blog post from one of my favorite designers, Andy Works. He has a series of apps called the Not Boring Apps that are really, really impressive. This blog post is interesting enough that it honestly deserves a video of its own, but I just want to showcase some of the really cool checkboxes that they have done. Look at the 3D animations on these things when you click them. Ugh, that's so good. And when you complete things, they explode. They also focus a lot on the sound design and things too. It's such a far difference when you compare this to a simple checkbox. Also notice this checkbox is in a box. It's not even a circle, it's a sphere. You get the idea. Maybe the future isn't even a radio button or a radio toggle. Maybe it's something 3D. Wild to think. And it also kind of contrasts with the bit at the beginning about the web. You see, people on the web think conventions are boring. Well, not just the web, because Andy is the furthest thing from a web dev. He's in mobile and iOS dev, and he's building crazy 3D interactive environments ignoring these same rules. So as much as it is cool to blame the web for things, there are people who are pushing these limits all over the place too. And I almost think these mindsets are both opposite, but also important, where they're both arguing for good user experience, but they're doing it from different sides. Huge shout out to both Andy for so much cool stuff, as well as Nikki. This whole blog is incredible. He also made Fira Code, which is a great font. Dope dude, incredible stuff. I'll be reading many more of his blog posts in the future, so keep an eye out for those. So give him a follow. Great dude, incredible work. As always, appreciate y'all a ton. See you in the next one. Peace, nerds.